That night, just as my wife and son went to bed, the phone rang in the darkness. I picked it up, and on the other end was Zoe, my 6-year-old niece, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Uncle, they've locked me up. I'm so scared." Then the line went dead. In a panic, I called my parents, who had been entrusted with raising Zoe after my younger brother disappeared. But the phone rang into an endless void with no one answering. My heart felt like it was being squeezed. I sped through the stormy rain. When I arrived, the house was pitch black, the door locked tight. I broke a window to get inside, and what I saw made the blood in my veins freeze. My name is Elias Turner. I'm 37 years old, living in a small town called Bowling Green, Kentucky. My life was as ordinary as any other man's. By day, I worked as a mechanic at a local garage, and at night I came home to my wife, Hannah, and our son, Rocky, an 8-year-old rascal but well-behaved. We had a small wooden house by the highway with a backyard big enough for Rocky to kick a soccer ball and for Hannah to grow a few rows of vegetables. Every morning I woke up early to brew coffee, kiss my wife and son goodbye, and dive into a day filled with grease and the clanging of metal. Life was stable, not wealthy, but fulfilling. Or so I thought until that night when everything fell apart. But to tell this story fully, I have to go back in time, because what happened to Zoe, my poor niece, was no accident. It stemmed from the seeds of tragedy within my own family, cracks I had deliberately ignored, hoping time would mend them. Now, as I sit here writing these lines, my heart still aches whenever I think of my younger brother, Jetson. Jetson was 5 years younger than me, born in what my parents called the lucky year. From a young age, he was exceptionally bright. I still vividly remember those afternoons in Nashville where we grew up. Jetson would sit for hours at the study table sketching machine diagrams while I ran around outside with friends. Our father, Stone Turner, an aging construction worker, was always proud of Jetson. "My boy's going to be an engineer, going to change the family's fortunes," he'd say, his voice brimming with pride. Our mother, Robin, doted on Jetson even more than me. She said he took after her, slender and sensitive. I wasn't jealous. Jetson was my little brother, and I always loved him. We grew up together, sharing everything, from an old bicycle to teenage secrets. When I was 18, I left Nashville for Bowling Green to find work and married Hannah, a girl I'd known since high school. Jetson stayed behind, went to college, and graduated with top marks as a mechanical engineer. He married a beautiful, gentle woman named Mia, and they had their first child, Zoe, when Jetson was just 28. The first time I held Zoe, it felt like holding a piece of my brother's soul. She had big round eyes, slightly curly hair, and a smile that could melt anyone's heart. Everything seemed perfect. Jetson worked at a large engineering firm in Nashville, earning a high salary and living in a spacious house. We'd meet a few times a year during Thanksgiving or Christmas. I'd tease him. "You're rich now, don't forget to send some money to your poor older brother." Jetson would laugh heartily, clap me on the shoulder, and say, "Elias, I'll take care of the whole family. Wait till I buy a bigger house and I'll invite you all over." In those moments, life felt truly beautiful. But then disaster struck, swift as an unforecasted storm. It was an autumn evening when Jetson was 30. Mia was driving Zoe home after a shopping trip. On the highway, a drunk driver crashed head-on into their car. Mia died on the spot. Zoe miraculously survived with only minor injuries, but Jetson, he completely fell apart. I got the call from the hospital and drove like a madman from Bowling Green to Nashville. When I arrived, Jetson was sitting by Zoe's bedside, his face pale, eyes red and swollen. "Mia, she's gone," he whispered, his voice breaking. I hugged my brother, trying to hold back my tears, but my heart was shattered. Mia was everything to Jetson, his first love, his partner, the mother of his daughter. From that day, Jetson changed. At first, he tried to stay strong. He kept working, raising Zoe with help from our parents, but the pain was too much. Jetson started drinking, first a glass to forget, then entire bottles. He quit his job, stayed holed up in the house, and forgot to eat. I called him every week, trying to reason with him. Jetson, you have to live for Zoe. She needs her dad. He promised to try, but he'd relapse. One night he called me at midnight slurring drunkenly, "Elias, I can't take it anymore. Why did life take Mia from me?" I listened, comforted him, but a sense of helplessness overwhelmed me. I wanted to help, but my job and family in Bowling Green kept me tethered. Things got worse. Jetson started taking sedatives, pills prescribed for his depression. But he abused them, taking too many, clouding his mind. Zoe, only 3 at the time, began to feel the effects. She smiled less, often sitting alone with her mother's old toys. Our parents, Stone and Robin, who lived just a few blocks from Jetson, stepped in. They'd pick Zoe up, feed her properly. Practical and image-conscious, our father wanted the family to appear perfect, while our mother often spoke of her sacrifices. They urged Jetson to seek treatment, but he brushed them off. "I can handle it." He usually responds defensively like that. I remember the last time I saw Jetson before everything unraveled. It was a sweltering summer afternoon, and I drove to Nashville to visit him. Jetson was slumped on the sofa, dark circles under his eyes, empty liquor bottles scattered on the floor. Zoe ran to me, her small voice saying, "Uncle Elias, Daddy's always sleeping." My heart clenched. I pulled Jetson out to the backyard and spoke sternly, "You need to snap out of it. Zoe needs you. If you can't, let me take her to Bowling Green for a while." Jetson shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "I don't want to be away from her. But I'm dying inside." I hugged my brother, promising to help, but deep down, I feared the worst was coming. And it did. One early morning, my parents called me, my mother's voice trembling. "Son, Jetson's gone. He left Zoe at our doorstep with a letter." I was stunned and raced to Nashville. Jetson's letter was scrawled messily. "Dad, Mom, Elias, I can't take care of Zoe anymore. I need time to get treatment to heal. Please take care of her for me. I promise I'll come back when I'm better. Love you all." Zoe, then 4 years old, stood trembling beside our parents, clutching an old teddy bear. She looked at me, her eyes glistening. "Where's Daddy, Uncle?" I didn't know how to answer, so I just held her close and promised her that her father would come back soon. The feeling at that moment was as if someone was crushing my heart. Jetson, my little brother, the bright, kind boy I once thought would achieve great things, had now abandoned his young daughter to escape his own life. I knelt down, looked into Zoe's big round eyes, and tried to hold back my tears. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Uncle's here. Grandpa and Grandma will take care of you, and I'll come visit often." Zoe nodded, but her eyes were lost, searching for an answer I couldn't give. I stood up and turned to my parents, Stone and Robin, who were standing on the porch. Stone, with his silver hair and sturdy frame, stood with his arms crossed, deep in thought. Robin wiped her tears, muttering, "How could Jetson do this to her?" I didn't blame Jetson. I knew my brother was battling the unbearable pain of losing his wife in that horrific accident. But leaving Zoe like this, caught on the fragile line between hope and despair, tore at my heart. I looked at my parents, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, Dad, you'll take care of Zoe, right? She needs a stable home." Stone nodded firmly. "Of course, Elias. She's our granddaughter. We'll take care of her." Robin added, her voice resolute, "Don't worry, son. I'll treat Zoe like my own." That day, I stayed at my parents' house all day. The house in Nashville, where I grew up, was just as I remembered. The smell of old wood, the ticking of the wall clock, and the worn-out sofa where Jetson used to lie reading books. Zoe sat in a corner, clutching her teddy bear, occasionally looking up at me. I told her stories about my childhood with her dad and promised to bring my son over to play with her often. Zoe gave a faint smile, but it wasn't enough to hide the sadness in her eyes. My parents quickly handled the legal paperwork. They contacted the local authorities and applied to become Zoe's official guardians. I stayed a few days to help, running back and forth between offices, filling out forms. Finally, the authorities approved. My parents received a monthly foster care stipend, about $500, not much, but enough for Zoe's clothes, food, and school supplies. Stone held the documents and said to me, "This is our family's responsibility, Elias. We'll do it well." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief. After all, they were my parents, Zoe's grandparents. I trusted they would love and care for my niece. At first, everything seemed fine. I returned to Bowling Green and resumed my routine at the auto repair shop. In the early days, I called my parents weekly to check on Zoe. Robin would say, "Zoe's doing great, Elias." I bought her some new dresses and baked cookies for her. Stone boasted, "I took her to the park last weekend. She loved it." Hearing this warmed my heart. Zoe was being cared for, loved. That's all I wanted. Hannah, my wife, reassured me, "Don't worry too much, honey. Your parents will do a good job. Zoe will be fine." Rocky was excited, eager to visit cousin Zoe in Nashville. I promised him I'd arrange it soon. In the first few months, I visited Zoe whenever I could, though not as often as I'd have liked. The drive from Bowling Green to Nashville took over an hour, and work at the garage was hectic. I had to fix cars, check invoices, and sometimes work overtime to support my family. Hannah was busy with her hospital shifts, and Rocky was at an age where I had to drive him to soccer practice. Life pulled me along, but every time I thought of Zoe, guilt gnawed at me. I told myself I need to visit her more often. But weeks turned into more weeks, and I settled for phone calls, listening to Robin's cheerful updates. "Zoe's doing great, Elias. She's learning to draw." On the rare occasions I had time, I drove Rocky to my parents' house to visit Zoe. She'd light up, running to hug him. The two kids would play in my parents' yard, chasing each other around the old oak tree. Watching them, I felt a sense of relief. Zoe still had her smile, still held onto some of her childish innocence. But I didn't realize that beneath the calm surface, cracks were starting to form. About a year later, things began to change. I noticed Zoe wasn't as vibrant as before. During one visit, I saw she was thinner, her cheeks hollow, her skin pale. She sat in a corner, clutching her teddy bear, barely speaking. I asked, "Zoe, what did you eat today?" She hesitated. Bread and cheese." I turned to Robin, trying to stay calm. "Mom, Zoe looks too thin. Are you feeding her enough?" She laughed it off, waving her hand. "Oh, kids, Elias. She's picky, but I'm working on it." Stone chimed in. "Don't worry, we're taking good care of her. She's fine." But Zoe's eyes unsettled me. They no longer sparkled, they were distant, as if searching for something far away. I tried to convince myself my parents were doing their best, that they loved her. But a bad feeling kept creeping in. I started noticing small details. My parents' house had new items, a large screen TV, a few new handbags for Mom, and Dad bragged about dining out with friends. I wondered, where was the $500 monthly stipend going? Were they using it to care for Zoe? One time I suggested, "Mom, Dad, let Zoe come to Bowling Green for a week to play with Rocky. Hannah would love that too." Mom immediately refused. "No, Zoe's not feeling well. She's used to us." Dad added gruffly, "You and Hannah are so busy. How could you manage? We'll take care of her." I argued, "But she needs a change of environment. Staying with us for a bit would be good for her." Robin brushed it off. "She's attached to me, Elias. Don't worry." I was frustrated but didn't want to fight. They were my parents, after all. I told myself to trust them. But the guilt over Zoe wouldn't let me go. Every night lying next to Hannah, I thought of her. "Hannah, do you think Zoe's okay?" I asked. Always optimistic, Hannah squeezed my hand. "Honey, your parents are adults. They know how to care for a child. Zoe will be fine." But I couldn't shake the feeling I was failing her. I called more often, but my parents always said everything was fine. "Zoe just ate a big meal," Robin would say. "She's playing in the yard," Stone would add. I wanted to believe them, but my heart felt heavy. Meanwhile, Jetson remained missing. I hired a private investigator, spending thousands of dollars, but found no leads. Jetson had vanished from the world. I lay awake at night wondering where my brother was, what he was doing, if he was okay. Zoe sometimes asked, "Uncle Elias, why is Daddy taking so long to come back?" I'd hug her and lie. "He's just gone away for a bit, but he'll be back soon." But I didn't know when or if he'd return. Time passed and Zoe grew up under my parents' care. She turned 5, then 6, but each time I visited she looked thinner, quieter. Once she sat in a corner clutching her teddy bear, whispering, "Uncle, I want to live with you." I smiled, ruffled her hair. "I'll take you home soon, Zoe. Just wait for me." But when I brought it up with my parents, they refused. "She's too weak, Elias. Let us take care of her." I started to grow suspicious. My parents, always practical and concerned with appearances, didn't want anyone to know Jetson had abandoned his daughter or to think they weren't caring for their granddaughter properly. But their true love for Zoe, I was no longer certain. My visits became less frequent, not because I didn't want to see her, but because life in Bowling Green was overwhelming. The garage was busy, Hannah worked night shifts, and Rocky started 4th grade. I told myself, as long as Mom and Dad are taking care of Zoe, I don't need to worry. I wanted to believe it, but the bad feeling grew stronger. I didn't know that the cracks in my family were deepening. My parents, whom I trusted, were growing indifferent to Zoe. The stipend I thought was for her care was being misused. And Zoe, that poor little girl, was quietly suffering in the home that was supposed to be her haven. I never imagined that a year later a phone call in the middle of a stormy night would shatter all my trust, plunging me into a nightmare I'd never forget. That night, the rain poured down in torrents. Bowling Green was engulfed in the growling of thunder and the lashing of rain against the roof, as if it wanted to tear everything apart. I had just finished a long day at the garage, my back aching, my hands still smelling of motor oil. Hannah had gone to bed early after her night shift at the hospital, and Rocky was curled up in his blanket, lost in the dreams of an 8-year-old. I sat in the living room, flipping through an old magazine, trying to shake off the unease that kept nagging at me. It had been 2 years since Jetson disappeared, and Zoe, now 6 years old, was still living with my parents in Nashville. I had called them a few days ago as usual, and Robin had said, "Zoe's doing fine, Elias. She just ate a big meal." But why did her voice sound rushed, like she wanted to end the call quickly? I brushed it off, telling myself I was overthinking. Then the phone rang. The sharp ring cut through the night. I startled, glancing at the clock, nearly midnight. Who would call at this hour? An unfamiliar number, but the area code was Nashville. My heart pounded as I picked up. "Hello?" I whispered, not wanting to wake Hannah. On the other end, a trembling, tiny voice came through as if from another world. "Uncle Elias, I'm locked up. I'm so hungry. I'm scared." It was Zoe. Her voice was frail, halting as if she were holding back sobs. I froze, my hand gripping the phone tightly. "Zoe? Where are you? Locked up how? Tell me." But there was only static, then the line went dead. I called back, the ring echoing uselessly. No one answered. Panic surged like a wave, drowning all reason. I rushed into the bedroom and shook Hannah awake. "Hannah, Zoe called. She said she's locked up. She's scared. I'm going to Nashville now." Hannah sat up, eyes still heavy with sleep. "What? What's wrong with Zoe? Calm down. Call your parents first." My hands shook so much I nearly dropped the phone as I dialed my parents' number. It rang and rang. No answer. I tried again, this time Robin's mobile. Still nothing. My heart felt like it was being crushed. Zoe was in danger. I could feel it, as real as the biting cold of the rain outside. "Hannah, I'm going." "Stay here with Rocky. I'll call you," I shouted, grabbing my jacket and car keys, not waiting for her response. The rain lashed the windshield like blades, the wipers working at full speed but barely clearing the view. The highway from Bowling Green to Nashville, over an hour's drive, felt endless now. I floored the gas pedal, the tires screeching on the slick road. Thunder roared, but it couldn't drown out the pounding of my heart. Locked up? Hungry? scared? Those words swirled in my head, drilling into my chest. Where were my parents? How could they let Zoe call me in the middle of the night, her voice so terrified? I thought of my visits, Zoe's lost eyes, her frail body. I had ignored those signs, trusted that my parents were taking care of her. Now I wanted to punch myself for my stupidity. The highway was pitch black, my headlights cutting through the thick rain. I tried calling Zoe's number again, but it was futile. I called my parents' home and mobile numbers, no answer. I told myself, maybe they're fast asleep, maybe Zoe's just scared because of the storm. But deep down I knew something was wrong. Zoe wasn't a child who exaggerated. If she said she was locked up, it was true. I pressed the gas harder, ignoring the rain threatening to engulf the car. The image of Zoe, tiny, clutching her worn teddy bear, flashed in my mind, making my eyes sting. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, I reached my parents' neighborhood in Nashville. Their old wooden house loomed in the beam of my headlights, shrouded in the rain. The house was completely dark, not a single light seeping from the windows. I parked at the gate, jumped out, and was soaked in seconds. I pounded on the door, shouting, "Dad! Mom! Open the door! Where's Zoe?" No response. I banged harder, my hands stinging, but only the sound of rain answered. I ran to the back door, hoping it was unlocked, but it was bolted shut. My heart raced, anger and fear mixing. Where was Zoe? If my parents weren't home, how did she call? And if they were here, why wasn't anyone answering? I didn't think further. Grabbing a large rock from the yard, I smashed the side door's glass window. The shattering sound drowned out the thunder. I carefully cleared the shards and climbed inside. The familiar smell of old wood and musty air hit me, but it brought no comfort. "Zoe!" I shouted, flipping the light switch. No power. The house was swallowed in darkness, with only my phone's flashlight casting eerie beams on the walls. I searched the first floor, living room, kitchen, dining room. No one. My mind reeled. Where was Zoe? Where were my parents? I raced up the stairs, taking 2 steps at a time, calling Zoe's name nonstop. In the second-floor hallway, I heard a faint noise, like a soft whimper. I froze, my heart pounding. "Zoe? Where are you?" The whimper came again from the small room at the end of the hall, the one my parents used as a storage closet. I ran to it, pushed the door, but it was locked. "Zoe!" I banged on the door, my voice hoarse. A weak voice answered from inside, "Uncle Elias, I'm in here." I didn't hesitate. With all my strength, I kicked the door, the weak hinges giving way. In the dim light of my phone, I saw Zoe. She was curled up in the corner on the cold floor with only a thin blanket. She was pale, her cheeks sunken, her eyes hollow. Her small hands clutching her teddy bear as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the world. "You finally came to get me," Zoe whispered, her voice so faint I had to kneel to hear her. I scooped her up, her body frighteningly light, as if she had no strength left. "You're okay now, Zoe." "Uncle's here," I said, but my voice broke. She trembled in my arms, ice cold. I looked around the room. No bed, no food, just a few crumbs of dry bread scattered on the floor. An old phone lay in the corner, probably borrowed from a school friend. Zoe must have used it to call me. Rage surged, but I suppressed it. Now wasn't the time. I carried Zoe downstairs, wrapping her in my jacket to shield her from the rain. "Uncle's taking you to the hospital, okay?" Zoe nodded weakly, her head resting on my shoulder. I rushed to the car, placed Zoe in the back seat, and draped a blanket from the trunk over her. The rain soaked through my clothes, but I didn't feel the cold. All I felt was panic and the burning anger in my chest. I drove to the nearest hospital in Nashville, calling Hannah on the way. "Hannah, I found Zoe." "She's not okay. I'm taking her to the hospital." Hannah gasped. "Oh my God, what's wrong with Zoe?" "Where are your parents?" I gritted my teeth. "I don't know. They're not home." At the hospital, I carried Zoe into the emergency room. Nurses rushed over, placed her on a stretcher, and wheeled her inside. I stood outside, drenched, staring through the glass door. Zoe lay there, small and frail, surrounded by doctors. A nurse approached me. "Are you the child's relative?" I nodded. "I'm her uncle, Elias Turner." She jotted something down and said, "We'll check on her right away. Please wait here." I sank into a waiting room chair, my hands trembling. The image of Zoe curled up in that locked room haunted me. Where were my parents? How could they let this happen to her? The stipend, their promises to care for her. Were they all lies? I called my parents again, but still no answer. I texted Hannah, telling her to stay with Rocky and that I'd update her. But in my heart, I knew everything had changed. The dark house, the locked door, and Zoe, the little girl I loved like my own, left starving and terrified. I swore to myself that no matter what happened, I wouldn't let Zoe suffer anymore. The hospital in Nashville was brightly lit, but the atmosphere was chillingly cold. I sat in the waiting area, my jacket still soaked from the rain, clutching my phone as if it were the only thing keeping me from falling apart. The image of Zoe lying on the stretcher, small, pale, her sunken eyes filled with panic, haunted me. I couldn't shake the moment I found her in that locked room, curled up on the floor, clinging to her old teddy bear like it was her last lifeline. Where were my parents? How could they let Zoe end up like this? The questions bored into my mind, each one like a stab. The emergency room door swung open. A doctor stepped out wearing glasses, his graying hair neatly combed, a name tag on his white coat reading Dr. Apollo Patel. He looked at me, his expression serious yet gentle. "Are you Elias Turner, the girl's uncle?" he asked. I nodded, standing up abruptly, my voice hoarse. "How's Zoe, doctor? Is she okay?" Dr. Patel gestured for me to sit back down, then sighed, his voice low. "I'll be straightforward. Zoe's condition is serious. She's suffering from chronic malnutrition, prolonged starvation, and physical exhaustion. There are also signs of psychological distress, likely from extended neglect. We're administering fluids and nutrients, but she needs close monitoring." His words hit me like a punch to the chest. Chronic malnutrition, prolonged starvation, psychological distress. I shook my head, struggling to process each word. How could this happen?" I stammered. "She lives with her grandparents. They get a stipend to care for her. How could she be starving?" Dr. Patel looked at me with sympathy. "I don't know your family's circumstances, but this didn't happen overnight. Zoe has been malnourished for a long time, possibly months, even a year. She's severely underweight, deficient in vitamins, and her mental state is unstable. Do you know anything about her situation before you brought her here?" I sank back into the chair, my mind reeling. Memories flashed like a fast-forwarding film. Zoe's gaunt frame, her hollow cheeks, her lost eyes every time I visited. The times she whispered, "I want to live with you, Uncle." And I'd just smile, pat her head, thinking she only missed me. The times Robin said, "Zoe's picky," or Stone insisted, "She's fine, why are you worrying?" I had seen the signs, but I chose to trust my parents, to believe they loved their granddaughter. Now the doctor's words tore through the facade of lies I'd built for myself. I had failed Zoe. I had let her suffer in silence. "Doctor," I whispered, my voice choking, "will she be okay? She's everything to me." Dr. Patel placed a hand on my shoulder. "We'll do our best. Zoe's young, her body can recover, but she needs proper care, both physically and mentally. You should contact Child Protective Services. This situation, it shows signs of serious neglect." I nodded, but my mind was blank. Neglect. The word echoed in me, sharp as a blade. I looked back through the glass door of the emergency room. Zoe lay there, eyes closed, an IV line in her arm. She looked so small, so fragile, like a bird with broken wings. I wondered, what had Zoe endured in that house? The days and months of being neglected, locked in a dark room, hungry and afraid. And my parents, Stone and Robin, the people I trusted. What had they done with the stipend meant for her? I remembered Robin's new handbags, the big screen TV in their living room, Stone bragging about dinners with friends. The $500 monthly stipend was supposed to buy food, clothes, and school supplies for Zoe. Now I realized the bitter truth. They had spent it on themselves. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. Rage surged, but I suppressed it. Zoe needed me to stay calm. I pulled out my phone and texted Hannah, "Zoe's malnourished, it's bad. I'm at the hospital. She'll be okay." Hannah replied instantly. "My God, Elias, how did it come to this? I'll come see her tomorrow." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Robin's number. My heart tightened, but I answered, my voice icy. "Mom, why are you calling so late?" Robin's voice came through, rushed but hesitant. "Elias, where are you? Have you seen Zoe? Your dad and I went to a friend's party, and when we got back, she was gone. The side window's broken too." I was stunned. A party? They left Zoe alone in a locked house to go to a party? It was unthinkable. I wanted to scream, to drive back to their house and confront them, demand the whole truth, but I held back, pretending ignorance. "What do you mean Zoe's missing? You left her home alone?" I emphasized each word, struggling to keep my voice steady, though anger boiled inside me. Robin fumbled. "Well, we thought Zoe was asleep and we were only gone for a bit. When we got back, she wasn't there. Have you seen her? We saw your missed calls. Did you take her?" I heard Stone in the background gruff, "Tell Elias not to make a big deal out of this." I clenched my jaw, seeing their blatant deceit. They weren't worried about Zoe's disappearance, didn't know she was lying in a hospital too weak to sit up. They just wanted to cover it up, to save face with the neighbors. "Mom," I said, my voice trembling with anger, "how could you leave Zoe alone? She's 6 years old. You knew she was frail. Why weren't you home taking care of her?" Robin faltered, her voice rising. "Elias, you're talking like we abused her or something. We just stepped out for a bit. Zoe's well-behaved, you know that. She can sleep on her own." Stone cut in, his tone sharp. "You dare blame us? You're too busy to care for her, so don't lecture us." I was speechless. Not a word of apology, not a hint of concern, only blame and pride. I wanted to scream into the phone to tell them Zoe was fighting for her life because of their neglect, but I stopped myself. If I spoke now, they'd find ways to dodge, to fake concern. I had to protect Zoe first. "Fine," I said, my voice cold as ice. "I'll look for Zoe. You two should look for her too. If you find her, call me immediately." I hung up before they could respond. Standing in the hospital hallway, I felt like the world had collapsed. My parents, the people who raised me, whom I trusted, had betrayed Zoe, betrayed Jetson. They hadn't just neglected her. They'd used her stipend to live comfortably while she starved and trembled in a locked room. I looked back at Zoe through the glass. A nurse was checking her monitor, her eyes full of pity. I told myself, "Zoe, I won't let you suffer anymore." But I knew that to keep that promise, I'd have to face the horrifying truth about my family. My parents weren't just indifferent. They had abandoned Zoe, leaving her to live in hunger and loneliness. I had to act, not just for Zoe, but for my own conscience. I called Hannah, my voice shaking. "Hannah, they left Zoe alone to go to a party. I'm calling the police. She can't stay with them anymore." Hannah sobbed over the phone. "Elias, how could they do that? Whatever you do, bring Zoe to us, okay?" I nodded, though she couldn't see. "I will. I promise." I hung up and looked at Zoe again. She lay there, frail but alive. That was my only glimmer of hope now. I knew the road ahead would be rough. My parents wouldn't let go easily. They'd blame me, fight to save face. But I was resolute. Zoe would never return to that house. Never. Sitting in the hospital hallway, I felt like I was standing in the middle of an endless storm. The steady hum of the machines in the emergency room was a constant reminder that Zoe was still fighting. But I knew the real battle was only just beginning. I took out my phone, took a deep breath, and called the Nashville police. An officer's voice answered. "Nashville Police Department, how can I assist you?" I tried to keep my voice calm, though my heart was pounding. I want to report an incident. My niece, Zoe Turner, 6 years old, was left alone at her grandparents' house. I went to check. The house was locked. No one was there and she was missing. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I didn't mention that I'd found Zoe or that she was in the hospital. I needed time to gather evidence to ensure Zoe's safety before my parents found out. The officer asked for more details, the address, a description of Zoe, and information about her grandparents. I answered briefly, my voice stiff to mask the rage boiling inside me. "We'll send someone to check immediately," he said. "Can you come to the station to provide more information?" I agreed, but my mind was already forming a different plan. I couldn't just sit and wait. I needed the truth, the full truth, about what had happened to Zoe over the past 2 years. The $500 monthly stipend, my parents' promises to care for her. It was all a lie now. I had to find evidence to protect Zoe, to ensure she never had to return to that house. I looked back through the glass door of the emergency room. Zoe was still there, an IV line in her arm, her small face pale but calmer now. A nurse came out and said, "She's more stable now, Mr. Turner, but she'll need to stay for a few days for monitoring." I thanked her, but my heart was heavy. I needed to act quickly before my parents realized Zoe was here. I started thinking about what to do next. Check their bank accounts, find out how the stipend had been spent. I drove back to my parents' house. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained dark and overcast. The house was still pitch black, no lights on. My parents were probably out looking for Zoe. I entered through the broken window I'd smashed earlier. Inside, the familiar smell of old wood and mildew hit me, but now it sent a shiver down my spine. I turned on my phone's flashlight and went straight to Stone's desk in the living room. He always kept important documents in that old drawer. I rummaged through it and found a stack of bank statements. My heart raced as I flipped through the pages. Their account showed the monthly stipend, $500 as expected. But the transactions that followed made my blood boil. Cash withdrawals, shopping at malls, restaurant bills, even a short trip to Memphis. There was no trace of purchases for food, clothes, or school supplies for Zoe. I snapped photos of every receipt, my hands trembling with anger. The money meant to nurture Zoe had been squandered on my parents' luxuries. I kept searching, moving to Robin's wardrobe. There I found new handbags, expensive shoes, and a fur coat she'd once bragged about getting on sale at a high-end store. I thought of Zoe's lost eyes, her frail body, and felt like someone was choking me. They had let Zoe starve while using her money to live lavishly. I photographed everything, carefully noting each detail. This would be evidence, but I needed more. I decided to talk to the neighbors. The house next door belonged to Cheryl, an elderly woman who often sat on her porch knitting. I knocked on her door, though it was nearly 2 in the morning. Cheryl opened it, her eyes surprised but filled with concern. "Elias, what's going on? I saw you break into your parents' house earlier." I took a deep breath and briefly explained finding Zoe without mentioning she was in the hospital. "Cheryl, have you heard anything strange from their house? About Zoe, my niece?" Cheryl sighed, her eyes heavy. "Elias, I don't want to speak ill of your parents, but I've heard Zoe crying a lot, especially at night. Once I heard Robin scold her, telling her to be quiet, don't bother us. Stone would yell, saying she was naughty and wouldn't eat." She paused, her voice trembling. "I asked about her once, but Robin said Zoe was just being whiny, normal kid stuff. She looked so thin, so I brought over some cookies once, but Robin wouldn't let her take them." I clenched my fists, trying to contain my anger. "Did you ever see them leave Zoe alone?" I asked. Cheryl nodded. "Many times. They'd go out at night, leaving her at home. I was worried, but I didn't dare interfere." Her words were another stab. I thanked her, promised to return, and went back to my car. My mind reeled as the pieces fell into place. Zoe wasn't just neglected. She was scolded, left alone in the house that was supposed to be her home. But I needed more evidence, especially from her school. The next morning, I called Maplewood Elementary, the school near my parents' house. I spoke with Zoe's teacher, Rebecca Allen. "I'm Elias Turner, Zoe Turner's uncle," I said. "I'd like to know about her school performance." Allen hesitated. "Mr. Turner, Zoe is enrolled, but she's barely attended class. She's been absent for over 90% of the school term." My heart sank. How is that possible? Didn't her grandparents say anything? Allen sighed. "We sent multiple warnings but got no response. I called once and Robin said Zoe was often sick, but she never provided medical records. We were very concerned, but we couldn't intervene further. I asked Allen to send me Zoe's school records. She agreed, and that afternoon I received an email with the documents. The records confirmed what she'd said. Zoe had attended only a few days at the start of the year, then was almost entirely absent. Teacher notes described Zoe as withdrawn, quiet, appearing tired. Reading them, my eyes stung with tears. Zoe wasn't just neglected at home. She'd been deprived of education, socialization, and the chance to live like a normal child. I returned to the hospital carrying the evidence I'd gathered. Bank statements, photos of Robin's luxury items, Cheryl's testimony, and the school records. Zoe was still in the recovery room, but the doctor said she was more alert. I sat by her bedside, holding her hand. "Zoe, Uncle's here. You won't have to go back there," I whispered. Zoe looked at me, her eyes still fearful, but she nodded weakly. "Uncle, I don't want to stay with Grandma and Grandpa anymore," she said, her voice faint as a breeze. I hugged her, vowing to myself that I'd do everything to bring her to my family. I knew what came next. I needed a lawyer and to file a case to gain custody of Zoe. My parents wouldn't give up easily. They'd fight, not out of love for Zoe, but for their pride and the stipend. But I was ready. For Zoe, I wouldn't back down. I started looking for a lawyer. Hannah recommended Jennifer Lawson, a well-known family law attorney in Bowling Green. I scheduled a meeting with her the next morning, bringing all the evidence I'd gathered. My parents' bank statements, photos of Robin's luxury items, Cheryl's handwritten testimony, and Zoe's school records from Maplewood Elementary. As I placed the thick stack of documents on her desk, Jennifer, a blonde woman with sharp eyes, flipped through each page, her brows furrowing tightly. "Elias," she said, her voice low. "This is serious. This evidence clearly shows neglect. The bank statements in particular are compelling. The stipend was obviously not used to care for Zoe." I nodded, trying to suppress my anger. "Jennifer, I just want Zoe to be safe. She can't go back to her grandparents." Jennifer looked at me, her gaze softening. "I understand. We'll file a custody lawsuit. You're a direct relative with a stable job and family. Your chances are strong." Jennifer got to work immediately. She prepared the lawsuit, detailing everything. Zoe's malnutrition, educational neglect, the neighbor's testimony, and the misuse of the stipend. I provided more information about my family, about Jetson and Zoe's circumstances over the past 2 years. Each time I recounted the story, it felt like someone was squeezing my heart. I had let Zoe suffer for too long, all because I trusted my parents. Now I had to make things right. A week later, the lawsuit was filed with the Nashville Family Court. I received notice that my parents would be served with a summons within a few days. I knew that once they received it, things would explode. Sure enough, that evening my phone rang. It was Robin. Her voice was icy, a stark contrast to the feigned concern from a few days earlier. "Elias, what kind of nonsense are you pulling? You're hiding Zoe. And now you dare sue your own parents? Who do you think you are, accusing us of neglecting her?" I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. "Mom, I'm not making accusations. I have proof. Zoe was malnourished, locked in a room, abandoned. How do you explain that?" Robin's voice sharpened over the phone. "You're making this up to get the stipend, aren't you? You want to steal her from us for the money." Her words cut like a knife, but I wasn't surprised. I knew my parents were obsessed with appearances, always thinking everything revolved around money and pride. Stone grabbed the phone, his voice booming. "Elias, if you don't drop this lawsuit, we'll disown you." I gripped the phone tightly, my heart pounding, but my voice remained cold. "Dad, I won't drop it. I'm doing this for Zoe, not for money. If you really loved her, why did you let her starve, let her tremble in fear in a locked room?" They hung up, leaving me with a long, cold beep. The air in my family, already fractured, now shattered completely. I sank onto the sofa, my mind reeling. Hannah hugged me from behind, whispering, "You're doing the right thing, Elias. Zoe needs you." I held her hand, feeling like I was clinging to a lifeboat in a storm. The following days were a blur of tension. My parents called repeatedly, sometimes threatening, sometimes feigning apologies. "Elias, you misunderstood," Robin said in one call, her voice softer. "We only went to that party once. Zoe was fine." I didn't respond, just hung up. I couldn't trust them anymore. Every time I heard their voices, I remembered Zoe curled up in that dark room, her trembling voice over the phone. "Uncle, I'm so scared." I told myself that no matter what they said, I wouldn't waver. Zoe deserved a real home, and I would do everything to give her that. Jennifer called me to her office a few days later with an update. "The court has set a hearing date 3 weeks from now," she said. "Your parents have hired their own lawyer, and they're trying to dismiss the neglect allegations. They claim Zoe was just sick and you're exaggerating to gain custody." I shook my head, unsurprised. "Jennifer, I have evidence. The doctor, the neighbor, the school, they all confirm the truth." Jennifer nodded. "Exactly. We have a strong case. But brace yourself, the hearing won't be easy. They're your parents, and family dynamics will make this more complicated." I knew she was right, but every time I thought of Zoe, I knew I had no other choice. I visited Zoe at the hospital every day. She was starting to eat small amounts of porridge, but remained quiet. I told her how Rocky was worried about her, about our house in Bowling Green, about Hannah's garden. "You'll love it there," I said, ruffling her hair. Zoe gave a faint smile, the first time I saw a spark in her eyes. That was my motivation to keep going. The day of the hearing arrived, and the atmosphere in the Nashville courtroom was heavy, like the sky before a storm. I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Jennifer, clutching the stack of evidence tightly. Across from us, my parents sat upright, their gazes icy. Stone wore an old suit, trying to maintain an air of dignity, while Robin kept wiping her eyes as if playing the role of a grieving grandmother. Their lawyer, a middle-aged man with a smooth voice, looked at me as if I were a traitor. Zoe wasn't present. Jennifer said it was better for her mental state, but I felt her presence in every moment. Judge Franklin Moore, a tall man with a stern face, struck his gavel. "Let's begin," he declared. Jennifer stood up and presented the case: Zoe's malnutrition, educational neglect, the misuse of the stipend, and the neighbor's testimony. She called the first witness, Dr. Apollo Patel. He took the stand, his voice calm and steady. "Zoe Turner suffered from chronic malnutrition, prolonged starvation, and shows signs of psychological distress due to extended neglect. This condition didn't develop in a few days. It's been ongoing for months, possibly a year." My parents' lawyer tried to counter. "Doctor, could it be that the child was just sick or a picky eater?" But Dr. Patel shook his head. "No, this is evidence of severe lack of care. A 6-year-old cannot cause this condition herself." I looked at my parents, hoping for a trace of remorse, but Robin only lowered her head, and Stone frowned as if angry. The next witness was Cheryl, the neighbor. She took the stand, her voice trembling. "I heard Zoe crying many times, especially at night. Mr. and Mrs. Turner often left her alone, going out until late. I once brought food over, but Robin wouldn't let Zoe take it." Their lawyer tried to twist her words. "You only heard crying? Kids can be whiny, right?" But Cheryl stood firm. "No, it wasn't whining. Zoe was scared, and I was worried for her." Rebecca Allen, Zoe's teacher, was next. She presented the school records, showing that Zoe had been absent for over 90% of the school term. We sent warnings but received no response from Mr. and Mrs. Turner, she said. Zoe was barely attending school. Judge Moore took notes, his expression growing more serious. Jennifer presented the receipts, highlighting my parents' extravagant spending. Handbags, dinners, a trip to Memphis. The $500 monthly stipend was meant to care for Zoe, but there's no evidence it was used for that purpose, she argued. My parents' lawyer countered, claiming they had cared for Zoe and that I was stealing her for the stipend money. Jennifer fired back sharply. Mr. Turner has a stable job and family. He doesn't need the stipend, he just wants his niece to be safe. It was my turn to take the stand. I looked directly at the judge, my voice trembling but resolute. Your Honor, I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this for Zoe. She was locked in a room, starved, denied an education. I'm her uncle and I want her to live in a safe environment where she's loved. I glanced at my parents, hoping they'd lower their heads in shame, but Stone glared at me and Robin turned away. My parents took the stand next. Robin sobbed, claiming they loved Zoe and that she was just sick. Stone accused me of making up stories to tear the family apart, but the evidence was overwhelming. Judge Moore called for a recess, then returned with his ruling. Based on the evidence and testimonies, he said, this court grants custody of Zoe Turner to Elias Turner. Mr. and Mrs. Stone and Robin Turner will be monitored by Child Protective Services and the foster care stipend will be terminated. The courtroom fell silent. Robin burst into tears, but I knew it wasn't for Zoe. It was for her pride. Stone stood up, pointing at me. You'll regret this, Elias. You're no longer my son. I looked at him, saying nothing. My heart ached, but I had no regrets. I had chosen Zoe, and it was the right choice. After the hearing, Jennifer patted my shoulder. You did well, Elias. Zoe will be safe with you. I nodded, but my heart was still heavy. My family was broken, but I had no other choice. I drove back to the hospital where Zoe was waiting. I sat by her bedside, held her hand, and said, Zoe, you're coming home with Uncle. Everything will be okay. She smiled faintly, hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her face. The feeling of Zoe's small hands clinging to me, weak but full of trust, warmed my heart. I knew that from now on I wasn't just Zoe's uncle. I would be her second father. A few days later, Zoe was discharged from the hospital. Dr. Apollo Patel gave me detailed instructions. She needs a special diet and regular psychological monitoring. Her mental state is still fragile, but with love and care, she'll recover. I nodded, committing every word to memory. As I carried Zoe to the car, she hugged her old teddy bear, looking out the window with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Am I going to meet Aunt Hannah and Rocky soon? She asked, her voice tiny. I ruffled her hair. That's right. They're waiting for you at home. The drive from Nashville to Bowling Green was strangely peaceful. I turned on the radio, choosing a cheerful children's song, hoping to help Zoe relax. She gave a faint smile, and I knew I was doing the right thing. When we arrived home, Hannah and Rocky were waiting at the door. Hannah ran out and hugged Zoe tightly. Welcome home, Zoe. Rocky, with a wide grin, held up a small ball. Zoe, I'll teach you how to play soccer. Zoe was shy, but her eyes lit up at the warm welcome. I looked at Hannah, feeling her unconditional love for Zoe. Thank you, I whispered. Hannah squeezed my hand. We're a family, honey. Zoe is our daughter. The first few days, Zoe was still scared. At night, she often woke up from nightmares, crying for me or Hannah. One night, I rushed into her room and found her curled up in the corner of the bed, clutching her teddy bear, whispering, I'm scared. They'll lock me up again. I held her, soothing her. No one will lock you up anymore, Zoe. Uncle's here, Aunt Hannah's here, Rocky's here. You're safe now. Gradually, Zoe began to trust us. The nightmares became less frequent, but I knew the wounds in her heart would take time to heal. I took Zoe to see a psychologist, Dr. Allison Pierce, a gentle but professional woman. During therapy sessions, Zoe slowly opened up, sharing about her time with my parents. The days she was left hungry, locked in a room, scolded for crying. Each story was like a knife to my heart. Uncle Elias, I just wanted to make Grandma and Grandpa happy, but I always did something wrong. Zoe said, her eyes welling with tears. Dr. Pierce reassured her. Zoe, you didn't do anything wrong. You deserve to be loved. I sat outside the room, listening through the door, my heart breaking. But I also felt hope. Zoe was slowly regaining her confidence. At home, we tried to give Zoe a normal life. Hannah cooked nutritious meals, from chicken soup to homemade cookies, to help Zoe gain weight. Rocky became her best friend. He was always protective of her. One day I saw Rocky holding Zoe's hand, leading her to the backyard to play soccer. Don't be afraid, I won't let you fall. Zoe laughed loudly, the first time I heard her clear, carefree laugh. Those moments, Hannah singing lullabies, Rocky playing with Zoe, our family gathered around the dinner table, were medicine for both Zoe and me. I enrolled Zoe in Rocky's elementary school, Bowling Green Elementary. On her first day, she held my hand tightly, her eyes anxious. Uncle, what if the teacher scolds me? I knelt down, looking into her eyes. The teacher will love you, Zoe, and Rocky will be there with you. Rocky, standing nearby, puffed out his chest. That's right, I'll protect you. Zoe smiled, and I knew she was starting to settle in. Her teacher paid special attention to her, reporting that Zoe was doing well in school, though still shy, and Rocky was always by her side, ensuring no one bullied her. As the months passed, Zoe began to change. She gained weight, her cheeks grew rosier, and her smile appeared more often. Hannah and I turned the living room into a play area for the kids, filled with toys and books. Every evening we read bedtime stories to Zoe and Rocky, tales of courage and family love. One night, Zoe hugged me before bed, whispering, Uncle Elias, you're the best dad in the world. My heart melted. Zoe had found her home, and I knew that despite her painful past, she had a bright future ahead. 4 years passed in the blink of an eye. Zoe was now 10 years old, a lively girl who loved painting and playing soccer with Rocky. She called me and Hannah Dad Elias and Mom Hannah, which filled us with both emotion and pride. Rocky, now 12, remained a devoted big brother, always looking out for Zoe at school. Our family had become a tight-knit unit, but there was still an empty space in my heart named Jetson. My younger brother, who vanished 4 years ago, remained a mystery. I didn't know if he was alive or gone, but I always prayed he'd find peace. One autumn afternoon, while I was working on a car at the garage, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, and I answered cautiously. Hello, who's this? On the other end, a familiar voice, deeper and more mature, came through. Elias, it's me. Jetson. My heart skipped a beat. Jetson? I whispered, hardly believing it. Where are you? Are you okay? Jetson gave a soft laugh, his voice thick with emotion. I'm okay. I want to see you and Zoe. I'm in Bowling Green. I raced home, my mind in turmoil. Hannah and Zoe were in the backyard tending to the vegetable garden. When I told them about Jetson, Hannah hugged me. Oh my God, Elias, he's back. Zoe looked up, her eyes curious. Dad, Jetson, is he really back? I nodded, holding back tears. Yes, Zoe. Your dad's back. An hour later, Jetson appeared at our doorstep. He had changed. Thinner, with streaks of gray in his hair, but his eyes were bright and full of life. Dressed in a sharp suit, he was no longer the man drowning in alcohol and pills 6 years ago. When Zoe ran to him, Jetson knelt down, enveloping her in a hug, tears streaming down his face. Zoe, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for leaving you, he said, his voice breaking. Zoe clung to him, sobbing, Dad, I missed you so much. I stood there, watching their reunion, my heart torn between joy and pain. Jetson turned to me, gripping my hand tightly. Elias, thank you. Thank you for saving Zoe, for giving her a home. I shook my head. Jetson, I just did what was right. You're my brother, and Zoe's your daughter. Jetson shared that over the past 6 years he had sought therapy, gone to rehab, and then moved to California to start over. Now he was a successful entrepreneur running a small tech company. Jetson stayed with us for a week to reconnect with Zoe. He spent time playing with her, taking her to the park and telling her about the years he fought to overcome his pain. Zoe slowly warmed up to her father, though she still called me Dad Elias. Jetson didn't mind, only smiling. "Elias, you deserve to be Zoe's dad." And Jetson made a surprising declaration. "I'm cutting ties with Mom and Dad. After what they did to Zoe, I can't forgive them." I nodded, understanding his decision. I too couldn't forgive what our parents had done to their own granddaughter. The years of Zoe's neglect, hunger, and fear in that locked room had left scars not only on her, but on Jetson and me as well. But now, seeing Zoe smile brightly beside her father, I knew we had overcome the darkness to find light. Our family, once shattered, was now rebuilding from the pieces with Zoe at the center of our love and hope. One morning, Jetson called me to the backyard. "Elias," he said, his voice low but firm, "I've decided to take Zoe to New York. My company there is doing well, and I want Zoe to have a fresh start, a new home." I looked at him, seeing the maturity and determination in his eyes. Jetson was no longer the lost brother of years past. He had found himself again, and now he wanted to give Zoe the best future possible. I nodded, though my heart felt heavy. "You're right, Jetson. Zoe deserves that, but you have to promise to take good care of her." Jetson gripped my hand, his eyes glistening. "I promise. And I'll bring Zoe back to visit you often. We're family." Zoe ran out, hugging both of us. "I'll call Dad Elias and Mom Hannah every day," she said, her voice clear and bright. I ruffled her hair, holding back tears. "We'll be waiting for your calls, Zoe." On the day Jetson and Zoe left, our whole family saw them off at the airport. Zoe hugged Hannah tightly, then jumped up to hug Rocky. "Rocky, I'll miss you so much." Rocky, trying to act tough, had red eyes. "Study hard, Zoe. I'll come visit you in New York." As Jetson and Zoe passed through security, she turned back to wave, her smile radiant like sunshine. I stood there watching, feeling both proud and wistful. Zoe had found safety and love, but I knew I'd miss her every day. A few days later, while cleaning my desk, I found an envelope tucked under a stack of bills. Inside was a check for $1 million signed by Jetson. A small note accompanied it, written in his neat handwriting from our school days. "Elias, this isn't to repay a debt, because I know nothing can repay what you've done for Zoe. This is for you and Hannah to have a better life, to thank you for being an amazing brother to me and a second father to Zoe." I held the check, smiling. Jetson had truly rebuilt his life, overcoming the pain of losing his wife to become a successful, mature man. I didn't plan to use the money right away. I wanted to save it, perhaps for Rocky and Zoe's future. But that check, beyond its material value, was proof of my brother's return. Meanwhile, I heard about my parents through a mutual acquaintance in Nashville. Stone and Robin lived in isolation in their old house, rarely going out. After the trial, the local community learned the truth about their neglect of Zoe. The friends who once partied with them now kept their distance, whispering about their selfishness. Cheryl, the neighbor, told me over the phone that Robin had tried to apologize to her, but her voice was full of false remorse. "They live in loneliness," Cheryl said. "They know they were wrong, but their pride won't let them admit it." I didn't feel joy hearing this. Despite what they'd done, they were still my parents. Part of me ached thinking of them, old and left behind in their own arrogance. But I didn't reach out. I had chosen Zoe, and I had no regrets. Sitting in our backyard, looking at the garden Hannah and Zoe once tended together, I reflected on everything that had happened. The fight for Zoe wasn't just a battle against my parents. It was a battle against myself, against the naivety of believing family would always put love first. I learned that true love requires sacrifice, courage, and sometimes the willingness to cut ties with toxic relationships. Zoe taught me that, with her resilient smile and the way she overcame darkness to find light. If I had advice for anyone, it would be this: Listen to your instincts. When I saw Zoe's gaunt frame and lost eyes, I chose to believe my parents' lies, and it nearly cost her future. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect the ones you love, even if it means confronting your own family. And most importantly, never give up hope. Zoe survived, Jetson returned, and I found the true meaning of family. Not in blood, but in love and responsibility.